What is going on, guys? Today we are going to be replacing the drive belt on my 2004 Polaris Sportsman. I'm going to show you how to do that today, and this video is going to be sponsored by KemiMoto. They sent me this drive belt to review and install, so wanted to thank them for sending that to me today. So this particular four-wheeler is a 2004 Polaris Sportsman 400, but it should cover any of the 400 Polarises, probably from the late 90s to mid 2000s, and steps I'm sure would be similar for any Sportsman in that year range, even if it's a 500, 600, 700. Might be small different variances, but this will get you close enough. So the tools you're going to need, and some required tools here, definitely you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. I recommend having a number 2 and a number 3. The numbers dictate how broad the tip is. This is a number 2. Like I said, you will need a number 3 as well. You can get by with a 2, but if you have a 3, that'd be nice. Flathead screwdriver. You may need a side cutters, and then you'll need a 3/8 socket, an 11 mil or a 7/16 socket. They're the same size. Also recommend a 10 millimeter socket, a variety of different extensions, and then either like a power tool or a ratchet, one or the other that you can use your extensions and sockets with. So the first step is going to be to remove the seat, which of course is this little latch back here. Just lift and pull back. All right, next we're going to just pull this panel free from the back panel, like so. And then it should also pull out of the front panel and the top panel. These little tabs here just kind of pull out. You just got to be gentle, pull and wiggle. Now we're going to remove these clamps here for the vent. Now if somebody else has already been in here before, you might just have plastic zip ties. So if you have zip ties, cut those with a wire cutter. These here, you can use either a small socket or flathead screwdriver to loosen them up. Really, one should probably be enough. All right, and last but not least, before being able to remove the clutch cover here, we have to remove this center section here, at least up where it's black. We'll have to remove a few fasteners in the middle here, as well as a few coming up the front and rear fender, but not all of them. You will not have to fully remove your fender extensions. All right, so here we are at the rear fender, and now depending on how previous owners have cobbled your fenders together, I believe these are all factory. I'm going to use a 3/8 socket to remove this very bottom screw, and then there's 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to remove 4 of them, and that should be all we need to remove, because that gets us up to where the green panel here starts, and we don't need to remove that. We just need to remove this black panel. You can use a 10 millimeter in a pinch, but you're more likely to round it out, so I recommend using the correct size. Okay, now with those 4 lower screws removed, you'll see that there's one more nut right here, and on the other side, on the front of the fender, it's a Phillips head screw. And it's kind of a rough angle here, so having a stubby Phillips would come in handy, but I'm using a number 2 here, and it's at a little bit of an extreme angle, but I think I'll have enough pressure to just hold it. And then again, we're going to use a 3/8 socket on the back side there on the nut to remove that. Don't lose your washers. There's one on the inside as well where I removed the nut. And now you can see this panel, it moves independently from the footwell panel. All right, so on the front here, we have a pretty similar setup. We've got a 3/8 nut that needs to be removed right here, and on the other side is going to be a Phillips head screw. That one's a little bit of a pain because the oil fill is right next to it. So I think we should be able to get at it enough though, again, just to hold it enough to remove the nut. And then again, we're going to use a 3/8 socket to remove this screw and this screw. My fender is broken, so I can get away without removing a few of those. And then for whatever reason on the bottom here, it looks like a 10 mil instead of one of these 3/8. So like I said, depends on who's been in here cobbling it together before. And now the front fender also moves independently of the footwell here. So all we have left is to remove the 4 screws that hold the foot panel itself in place, which on the top side, they're going to be Phillips head screws. Again, I'm going to use my number 2, but you could definitely use a bigger, more broad-tipped one. This just happens to be all I have with me. And on the bottom side of those 4 Phillips head screws, we have normal nuts right here. Those are going to be an 11 millimeter or 7/16. And with all 4 of the nuts removed, we can finish removing the Phillips head screws. A number 3 Phillips head bit works better for this. And now we should be able to finagle this piece out. Now you might have noticed this piece fall off when I removed the center here. It went on the back right here where the 2 screws go through, and it kind of spaces the back of it up so your feet tilt forward. Don't forget that on reinstallation. Now is a good time to clean up any mud here that maybe accumulated over some time on your wheeler. All right, and now the last step is to remove, there should be 9 3/8 head bolts holding the clutch cover on here. One, you can see right here where we loosen that clamp, and then just work your way around. You can't miss them. There should be 9 total, like I said, 3/8 head, and you know, an extension on the back ones here might help a little bit, but let's go ahead and zip those out now. Alright, now with all the screws removed, should be able to just kind of separate this rubber boot. If it's kind of glued on there, run a screwdriver or a pick around it to break it free. And then you should be able to kind of just wiggle it off. Alright, now there's a couple things to pay attention to here. Number 1, I recommend replacing the seal right here in this groove where the 2 halves of the cover meet, especially if it's not been replaced before or if it's really hard and dry rotted and cracked. Unfortunately, I did not order one yet before doing this video, but mine feels pretty pliable still, and I have no water in mine, so I'm not concerned with it. I'm going to put it back together with the old one for now, but if you're having any sort of water intrusion into here causing belt slippage, that's definitely something you want to replace. I'll try to link one of those seals down in the video description if you want to purchase one. Also, another thing to keep in mind is you can kind of see all this clutch dust right here. And now would be a good time to use a compressed air blowgun and just kind of blow it out. You want to do it out in the open. You don't want to be wearing any good clothing or be around anything that you don't want to get dirty, because when you start blowing this, clutch dust is going to go everywhere. I recommend wearing a mask or a respirator, just don't breathe it in. But basically you just want to kind of take a blowgun and blow around in here, get all that clutch dust out, and that is going to, in theory, extend the life of your clutch and get some of that debris out of there so it doesn't cause unwanted friction and heat and wear. Now a lot of clutches will have like a threaded hole right here where you need to put a bolt into it to separate the sheaths. On this 400, it does not have that. The belt is loose enough to where we pretty much just rotate the belt off of it. So what I'm going to do is just kind of pull up on the belt and then towards me, and then we're going to rotate this secondary clutch clockwise while I'm keeping pressure on the belt against me, and boom, came right off. And then you can just remove it from the primary. Now this looks to be, I don't know if it's an original belt, but it is a factory Polaris one. It seems like there's no really bad burnt up spots or anything, so I'm definitely going to hang on to this one for a spare. But we're going to go ahead and install the new KemiMoto one right now. Alright, so KemiMoto. Now, there's no markings on here anywhere saying which way the rotation of the belt is. So the general rule of thumb, if there's no arrow that says rotation is to have the wording facing it so you can read it. So as you can see, I can properly read these letters and numbers, so it's going to go on like this. So when the belt is installed and we're looking down at the clutch, we can still read it. You don't want to put it backwards like this. We want it like this. Now the rotation should be counterclockwise like this. I'm going to crank the engine over and just confirm that. So if you do have a belt with an arrow that says rotation, you want the arrow facing the front of the machine. So once we're sure we're installing the belt the correct direction, we're going to basically just do the reverse steps of removal. We're going to slip it over the primary first. Triple check we can read the wording. And then we're going to put it over the top of the secondary, and again we're going to put pressure towards the machine, pushing on the belt as we feed it around the secondary. It'll get a little tight. Just continue turning, and there we go. New belt is installed. Now I recommend putting the machine in neutral with the parking brake set. Make sure everything is free from anything that's going to rotate. Get all your tools off the machine and just fire it up. Give the throttle a couple of blips in neutral and make sure that the clutch and belt and everything is functioning as it should before you button everything together. Now, of course, another important thing that I forgot to mention is before you install a new belt, make sure you check around the sheaths here and make sure that there's no old debris or chunks of old belt that potentially got wrapped up in there. You want to make sure it's nice and clean in there. It's also important to note that a break-in procedure is very important on any type of drive belt. It's very similar to a snowmobile. Basically, for like the first 50 miles or so, you want to kind of vary your RPMs around. You don't want to be doing a lot of full throttle blasts. You certainly don't want to put a brand new belt on and then go plow your driveway. You want to naturally wear this edge down a little bit by using multiple RPM ranges and just kind of get it broken in. Otherwise, if you just throw it on and you go beat on it, you have a very good likelihood of damaging your new belt and having possible belt slippage or other problems down the road. And for those of you that don't know, there is a storage compartment here under where the seat goes that you can pull this cover off, and I went ahead and jammed my original belt in there just as a backup. Of course, doing this on the side of the trail would suck. You're not typically going to have all these tools with you, but you know, at least you're one step ahead having an extra belt. So now we're pretty much gonna do the opposite of what we just did to put everything back together. We're gonna start by wrestling this clutch cover back on. Before you do that, again, make sure that your seal is in place all the way around in this groove on the back half of the cover. Especially check the bottom where water is most likely to get in. Mine looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and get it into place here. And then we're going to fish the breather hose back on. Make sure it doesn't get folded over on the back side. Make sure it properly goes over the plastic piece. We're not going to tighten the clamp just yet. Got our cover in place, and I'm just going to start all the screws. I'm not going to tighten any of them just yet. I want to get all of them in and started, then we'll go around again to tighten them. Don't forget, if you have a clamp like I do here, put the screw through that before you start it into clutch cover. All right, all of the clutch cover screws are relatively snugged down. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is slid on far enough, tighten up the clamp, and then go around one more time by hand just to double check all the clutch cover bolts. Now, I don't like using an impact on screws that go into plastic just because you have a higher probability of breaking the plastic just from all the vibration and the impacting power. So I am going to go around one more time and just snug them up by hand with a ratchet here. They don't need to be very tight. It just goes into plastic. Essentially, you'll feel the screw bottom out and then just go a tiny bit more. Now is also a good time just to double check and make sure that your water drain plug on the clutch cover is snug. And I'm going to start up the machine one more time with the cover on just to make sure nothing rubs or makes any weird noises before we continue. Looks good, so we can go ahead and reinstall the footwell. So you can kind of see right here the mark in the mud, how this thing goes on there. It just goes like this with the open end of it towards the back of the wheeler. It's probably going to move when we go to put this on, but I just wanted to show you how it goes on before I actually put this piece into position. You want to make sure the front and rear fenders go down into the grooves of the middle piece in the footwell here as you're putting everything together, just like so. And now we can reinstall our 4 Phillips head screws from the top side with the 11mm or 7/16 head nuts from the bottom, and just cinch those down. If your screws are like this, where they're pretty rusty, I recommend taking them at least to a wire wheel to clean that up a little bit, and maybe put some anti-seize on them. Also, 2 of the bolts are longer than the other 2. The 2 long ones, of course, go in the back here because of that spacer. So these 2 shorter ones are going to go in the front. The lock nuts that go on the bottom side of the screws, you want the nylon insert to be facing down like this. Now we'll reinstall the 3/8 head screws that we removed on this side, as well as the 3/8 and Phillips bolt in the back there. And then the same thing in the rear. I recommend you get all the bolts started by hand first before you tighten them down, just in case you got to do a little bit of adjusting. Makes it easier. Now we're going to reinstall the side panel. I like to start by getting this front tab into position first and the reserve fuel tank shut off through this hole. Then these top tabs, followed by the back ones. Just kind of push it into position. And then the seat will have 2 square cutouts in the front of it. Those are going to go over this tab here. There's another tab on the other side. Just gonna lay it down pretty much, then slide it forward and push down to make sure the back end latches. All right guys, so as you see here, the belt is holding up just great, loading up the wheeler into the bed of the truck. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, make sure you hit that like button, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. Check me out on all my socials, and as always guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day.